There was maybe a general message that, Gesine, you heard part of it yesterday, was to say, in line with these enlarging skills, we need to put our head out of the ocean. That was the first message. The second was we need to bring the ocean to the street. The second message. And the third, maybe hidden or explicit, and maybe use the opportunities that climate change offer today, because there is some flexibility, to ensure that the ocean is present, is reality in the climate change discussions. It's seizing the opportunities of climate change. That was my part of the work. Now we move to what came out of the discussion on the table this morning. So I remind the principles: ensuring effective stakeholder and public engagement, quality control credibility, including monitoring and evaluating what we do, end users accountability and responsibility, access and accessibility, and then there is the principles that will come from the young professionals, how much we hear that is new from there. So we are going to ask Robert, Nina, Sheila, and Dina to bring what they heard from the table. Robert, you start. So the issue was efficient stakeholder and public engagement.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. No, just to put these things there. So, there were, of course, 2 tables discussing this principle, and therefore 4 key messages that came out from this very fruitful and I would say very interesting conversation that we had. The first message, of course, it's that the mapping of the stakeholders has to be done in a very thorough way. It has to be very, very careful thought of. It's like you have to map the positions of the stakeholders, the knowledge they have, the values, the specific objectives, of course. And here you come to an overlap with a point that the other table raised, is the fact that when you engage someone, you have to engage it on a clearly defined issue. Someone yesterday was saying, be specific when you have to discuss something. Don't be too vague. Don't be too broad. You have to define one issue, and you have to give all the potential knowledge to the participants in order to discuss this specific issue. So this is one important, I would say, aspect, the pre-stakeholder engagement. What is the issue at stake? Who is going to participate? And also, most important thing, define beforehand the influence that your participation is going to have on the process. Because in that way, participants might get more involved, might get, care about things a bit more. We all know how frustrating it is to participate into something that we know is not going to have any effect on the decision-making process. So, stakeholder engagement has to define the influence beforehand is going to have on the process. This is very, very important according to what we discussed. Therefore, the process has to be fair and transparent in all stages. We have to understand what we're going to discuss, in which way we're going to discuss, and what is the result of this. And this has to also be consistent in a way. So the people were also saying that in fact this process has to be circular, has to be kind of in a circle. So you start from point A, you discuss something, but then you also have to give the feedback to the people. Understand what came out from the process, not just doing it per se. And finally, I think, if I'm not missing anything, is the fact that all the process has to be informed by research, has to be a competent process, not just shouting around. We have to avoid power dynamics when we discuss. We have to try to make everyone speak, even if they're not experts. Another a little concrete measure that was proposed in one table was this role play. Try to put yourself in the shoes of someone else in order to understand, because not everyone thinks in the same way. We do think that everyone thinks in the same way, but it's not like that. We all have different perspectives, we might have different interests, but we also might have different values. And it's important to understand that sometimes we have some prejudice on things and we might want to think about them. So this is also, I think, a very concrete measure that could be implemented when we do stakeholder engagement. Try to put yourself in the shoes of someone else, not only defending your own perspective. And I think this is it. I hope I wasn't too long.
You were perfect, I think. So do mapping, get a deal, clarify, be clear about the objectives and the expected impact, be circular, I simplify a bit, and role play, put yourself, when you say role play, means a specific step into your process, some activities, put yourself in the shoes of others. We continue, we go through the 4 reports, I think, and
yes,
we get some reactions.
To Nina Dzugic, who is going to tell us about her group that was focused on quality control and credibility, including monitoring. So Nina, where are you going? Including monitoring and evaluations. Oh,
I will carry it for you.
well, please.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, everyone. Yeah, if you can just...
Where?
No, just bring the board for me here.
Don't forget that you have people behind you too.
Sorry?
Don't forget that you have people behind you too.
No, not at all, not at all. I acknowledged you already. So, first of all, thank you ever so much for both tables that took part in principle number 2. It's been a great pleasure working with both tables. It was an unusual experience, I must admit. To my surprise, one of the tables, you can't see. Doesn't matter, we can. Okay. To my surprise, and then to everyone's surprise, one of the tables was fully consistent from the people from Portugal. So we'll have a unique perspective on principle number 2 from the Portuguese table, hence why we called the Portuguese table here, and I'll talk you through the key messages from Portugal. And we also have another table, and this is our groom's table. Fernando was in charge, and he was surrounded with 4 ladies. So let's see what they all came up with. So first of all, the Fernando's table came up with 2 key messages for each of the 2 key messages about the principles and 2 key messages about the practices. The 2 key messages about the principles are transparency in the process as such, or per se, and acknowledgement of complexity of the principles. Am I right? Okay. And about the practices is the need of certification of the process and also incorporation of the principles of the quadruple helix. Do we know what the quadruple helix is? Okay, so if you have any questions or should we can add anything to this, please feel free to talk about it a little bit later. Okay? From the Portuguese table, we have 2 key messages. The first one is very hands-on, which is design an EU ocean literacy platform. Not sure what you think about this, but I think this is a very good example or very good suggestion for the principle number 2, which is all about quality control and credibility, just to remind us. And the key message on designing an EU ocean literacy platform are to come up with a repository of all products, certification of all resources and projects, and also run by this idea to the DG Mare, DGAC, and UNESCO. Do we have people from DG Mare, UNESCO? Francesca?
Behind you.
Sorry, I haven't forgotten about you. So please try and think about this initiative on designing an EU ocean literacy platform. And the key message from the Portuguese table is implementation actions, projects of implementation of certified ocean literacy products tools for evaluation of all implementations and evaluation of methodology and effectiveness of it. And also, last but not least, suggestion is Ocean Literacy Stakeholders Committee to be founded. Am I right? Okay. And also to go into the education sector and sectorial actors and communication and marketing places as well. So more or less everything that we all talked about yesterday is summarized from the discussion at the Portuguese table. I just would like to add that with regards to the suggestion of designing an EU ocean literacy platform, perhaps this might be a good opportunity for Marina projects and our knowledge sharing platform to be used for to execute this points. Something to think about. And last but not least, being an evaluator, project evaluator myself, I couldn't resist not to bring up the evaluation criteria from Horizon 2020 that we all are very familiar with when we write our project proposals. The three major criteria are the excellence, the impact and implementation. And I would say that all suggestions that came along the principle number 2 with regards to the quality control and credibility are actually reflecting the Horizon 2020 requirements that we are dealing with for such a long time. So we really need to be very careful, and we need to pinpoint out the excellence of excellence that we all do, the impact of the work that we do, and how we implement that. So this is all from us for principle number 2. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's say one key element, we discussed it in, I heard it from other table, is this certification about the process. Let's say we all talk about stakeholder engagement. How do we ensure that it is done right? And how do we have, be it because we are part of this process or external, know what was the reality of this process? So we talked in a different group, you talked about labels, we talked about certification. I think that's a very practical element to be put on the table. Thank you. We move to principle 3. Sheila?
Yeah, I feel like I'm going to stand with my back to somebody regardless of where I stand, so I might turn around as I'm doing this. Okay, so our group, so we had 2 tables, and we were talking about the end user accountability and responsibility. And the end users that we were asked to talk about are the business, consumers, policymakers, scientists, and educators. So as you can imagine, 2 groups went off in completely different directions, which is great. They didn't all have the same ideas. And so it was really hard to summarize it all into 4 bullet points. But I think the first thing that we talked about quite a lot on the table, that I spent the most of the time in the beginning, was that we need to all know our responsibilities. So what we want to know is, what are the responsibilities of a scientist to do good science, of a business person to do ethical business, of the educators to actually educate properly. So that was the first thing. And then the second follows on a little bit from what was said just before, that we really need to have our science, our projects be more transdisciplinary. So it's really important that we don't, as happens quite often, have the knowledge transfer, the educators at the end. So with these Horizons projects, or with any kind of project, you spend all your time doing the science, the natural science, and then you forget that actually you should have incorporated the people who are going to be translating your knowledge, your science, to the education system, to the to the policymakers. You should include them from the beginning, and it should actually evolve with everybody's opinions, and you would get better science, more accepted science that way if you did that. So and then there was a little bit of talk that there should be some structured way for this to happen, in a structured science translation way. And actually the suggestion was that there are actually science centers, museums, all across Europe that could do that, and we should involve them more. So I'm sure there was a lot more said about that, but you can talk to the people who sat at table number 3 about that. And then the other table had some practical suggestions, but from a very different perspective. So they looked at the interactions between science and companies, so science and communication, the importance of communication skills that should really be part of our, I called it curriculum, and then somebody said, no, it's not something you should necessarily do at school, although we should do it there as well. It should be part of the science that we teach our students at university. We should have science communications as part of that, and I know that's happening in some places, but it really should be part of that at all levels. And then science and business, as a community, we should really engage with business people, i.e. we should go to their conferences, speak to them, and we should become critical friends, but we should also be transparent about it. There was the example of Wave Rider, a company that's here. Basically, if they had to, say, work with Shell or one of these big companies, that might look like greenwashing for their competitors. So you have to be transparent about what you're going to be doing from the beginning, so that it's clear to the public that you're doing this to help the business become more sustainable, but also you're doing this because you care, and it's not just taking money. So I think there's loads more, but that's what I'll summarize from our group.
Thank you, Sheila. Effectively, there was in some of the group and discussion these issues of be clear from the start about the role of everybody and the possibility to have a charter or a document that fixes a bit the contractual arrangements and who brings what and does what into projects, for example. I think that's one element in responsible that we thought about, to say, let's sign it at the start to clarify who does what throughout a process that brings many different parties, let's say, that we try to mobilize.
Principle 4, Dina.
So it's access and accessibility.
Hello. So we had 3 tables, more than others. First, so we have 4 main messages, 2 suggestions, and a recommendation. First, our tables really agreed on the importance of open access. And at one table we even said that actually the fact that we have been quite good in open access for science has been perhaps a catalyzer, or for sure has been a catalyzer of, for instance, Friday for Future movement that we are seeing now. So having more open access to quality scientific information is critical, more and more. There is a science responsibility in terms of scientists' responsibility in terms of lobbying for sustainability and storytelling. However, you approach your stakeholders in all different ways, has been already mentioned. You have to tailor your messages to your stakeholders, and also make sure that you give different types of information. But open access helps with that. So the more you have open access, the more your stakeholders can pick the information they are interested in. However, you also, one of the tables highlighted the importance of knowledge brokers, and also that they should be recognized. So not only that brokers have to be listened to and their role is important, but it should be recognized knowledge brokers that are trusted. So in terms of suggestions, we have one that there should be really a new space for communications in science institutions. We talked about marketing yesterday and the need for professional communication. So in scientific institutions, they should be really resourced innovative communication. It has to be a new role for scientists, for communicators in the science institutions. And that gaming can be another innovative way of engaging your stakeholders. Something has been mentioned as well. Role-playing, gaming, educating through entertainment is an important part of innovative communication. And finally, we also, as I think table 3 did, asked ourselves who is responsible for what in this process. The first are in RRI, And the answer is that the RRI framework gives us an opportunity to ask the right questions about this process that we are all engaged in. There are different responsibilities of different actors for different stages, or maybe they are all responsible for each of them a little bit in terms of the 6 principles of RRI, but you have to constantly repeat asking the questions, how do you validate your work against those principles? And this is where RRI is quite helpful. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I think the issue of these knowledge brokers as a new or as a profession recognized into the system, we had it also in Responsible. It came yesterday when we started Responsible. We talked a lot about multipliers, and let's try to find the priest, because the priest will share some words with the target group, and then we feel that these knowledge brokers is becoming more and more central in the discussion that we have around sharing knowledge, producing knowledge, sharing, and targeting people. So these were the 4 tables. I feel we start to get a bit of practical suggestions on the table. I think that's very good from yesterday. Ivan, you want to say something? Or, yeah? And then we will, Ivan, we can have, and then we move to the young professional to see what they brought. In the agenda at some point there will also be presentation again from Marina and Responsible on what is on platform that they've provided. Ivan, the floor.
Thank you. So I'm Ivan Conessa from DG Research, and I was a project officer for Responsible. Yeah, so I want to underline something with this exercise, which is very interesting, from the different tables addressing the 4 principles per se. But what the feedback given has to be a bit moderated, or because we don't represent all people having all the knowledge about these principles. For instance, when I hear for Principle 2 that we need to develop an EU platform for ocean literacy that should be managed by Mare or UNESCO. Actually, we put 7 million euros from Horizon 2020 to fund 2 projects, Sea Change Responsible. Sea Change gathered the members of MC, the European Marine Science Educator Association. We helped to get them a legal status. And also we addressed the other actors of ocean literacy, including Responsible. All during the last years, they will associate to MC to use this fora to disseminate their tools. So one question also is we should not duplicate, because duplication is a word we heard a lot also from these tables. So to avoid duplication, before delivery all the ways like this, we should have cross-checking what existing or not, because these reports, very nice as they are not epurated about anything. So I wish we had something cross-checked and with the actual result from both projects. I would have wished to see also the RRI roadmap, because here we have a methodology to change the way we define research topic and research programs, and where we might need the policy support of how to invite those research funders and policymakers in research to actually integrate this approach. So UNESCO has a large platform in development for ocean literacy, a global ocean literacy platform that is also existing. So there's tools existing, and my question is how we can use these existing platforms already funded by the EU taxpayer.
Thanks a lot, Ivan. Maybe one clarification about what comes out of the tables. We have our results from both projects. Some of the principles that were discussed here are coming from the roadmap, for example, and they are put on the table. We don't present the roadmap in a formal, but they are coming from the roadmap, or they are coming from the ocean literacy guidance that we are doing in Responsible. And what we take here as a group, we'll come back when we discuss about the final conclusion of the conference. There is maybe also a difference between making the synthesis of the conference itself and what we, as 2 projects, are taking on board to assess whether what we thought as main result and messages has been consolidated or should be a bit adapted, not taking, as you said, the words just as they come. And clearly with platforms and initiatives, we feel that there is already many platforms around, and that's the issue. Might not be to create a new platform, so we don't take it as a suggestion, a practical one. At the same time, I feel that some suggestion made about certification about the process, when we talk about stakeholder engagement, it's something we believe in both projects has to come. Which format we will be dealing with this certification, and what we get from the group, it seems that it's an issue, a suggestion that is shared a bit more widely than what we thought ourselves. Similar, what we heard again with Dina, we say we need to get more media, marketing, communication people here in the room, in our organization, or connected to our processes. We also feel that's an essential part of being successful. But we take your point very clearly. Let's say we don't just take messages like this, make a synthesis, and feel that this is our project results. I suggest we give the floor to young professionals, because we talked about it yesterday. We have many expectations. Let's be modest, and let's not put pressures also around it. They are standing up to show that the power is coming in the room, the change is there, is with us. You have to put the message. It's a group, but it's a group that has ambassadors. I would say not democratically elected, but that are committed to share what the group has developed and provided. The floor is yours. I don't know who is starting. Remember also that there are people behind you. And that you have to find a way to... Okay. Summer, Theophile, I don't know how you start, how you want to...
Alrighty then, guys. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I said good morning. Hello, everybody. Thank you very much.
So here's some input from our workshop, our Young Professionals workshop. So we were wondering if we had ocean dialogues or ocean monologues.
Many thanks for this. Because that's one of the key elements we get also in the manifesto. The key messages is which place do we give to young professionals, the youth? I think, is it just a justification of being good, or is there a real space into our discussion and debate? Do we give them their due role and responsibilities? I suggest, the panel discussion is open. It's going to be a discussions with all the group here, comments, reactions, elements that you can react to, you can complement, including the one that are calling for dialogues. I suggest we start maybe from what you heard, maybe just as a warm reactions of what you heard so far. Don't know who want to start. We can do it in any order. I don't think it matters very much.
Thank you. So I introduce myself again. I'm Camino Liquete and I work in DG Environment, and one of the main responsibilities of my team is the implementation of the Marine Strategy Framework Directive. So I'm very glad to be invited here and to be able to listen to all the insights that you have been building during the years and all the new inputs, like these young people providing us these motivating messages. It's a surprise for me that in the program, in the agenda of this meeting, you ask us to for opportunities and challenges from sectoral policies. That's the first ever time I heard that the Marine Strategy Framework Directive or the Maritime Spatial Planning is a sectoral policy. So they are broad, they are so huge that they cannot be considered sector. And this is actually the challenge from these kind of directives. They have a mandate to cover all aspects of the sea, and with all aspects is the conservation of biodiversity. All the human uses have to become sustainable, energy, fisheries, extraction of any kind of resources. So it's so broad, it's so holistic and so ambitious that it does require a lot of support from these initiatives. So that's part of the needs that we have. Being so cross-sectoral, but having the mandate, in our case in the MSFD, we have the mandate to maintain the health of the oceans, of the European oceans in this case, and a sustainable use of that. But we don't have this responsibility to manage all sectors that influence our oceans. In the MSFD, there are programs of measures, but the environmental ministry, the competent authorities in each of the EU member states don't have the control of all the actions that are affecting our oceans. So it's actually a challenge to align and get agreement across all those sectors, because there is a unique objective, which is getting sustainable use and healthy oceans for the new generations and for our own sake. So I will try to respond to some of the questions you ask us, opportunities and challenges. In the Marine Strategy Framework Directive in particular, there are some opportunities I see. The consultation processes are required. There is a regular requirement every 2 years. Member states have to make consultation processes about the marine strategies, holistic programs, all dealing with the oceans. But the thing is that this is far from being an engagement process. So it's just a consultation. It's a one-way. It's a monologue, as you said. There is no feedback. There is no closer in this cycle. So the opportunity is there. Still, these competent authorities, they have a lot of work to do. So they could need support from experts to do this kind of engagement and participatory process. This is far from being true so far. They just consult the people, and if they are able, they take something on board, and otherwise don't. So that's a possible opportunity. Then, of course, the publication of data. You talk about open access. That's the top one priority in the Commission, in all our directives, and it's being implemented. And also in the Marine Strategy in particular, we foster and we have an article that forces member states to publish the data, not, at the detail level, to make the data that they use for the assessments and the data coming from the monitoring public for the experts, for the citizens. But let me tell you that access and accessibility, there is a difference between access and accessibility, as you probably know. One thing is having access to raw data, and the other thing is having the possibilities to understand it. So, of course, we need much more efforts into that. But this directive and many others are opening the door for a brand new set of official data. It's official data. It has been reported for a legal act. So this is the basis of the managers. This is the basis of the decision making in each of our countries and in each of our regions and localities. And the third opportunity I see is that within our directive we have what we call a common implementation strategy. This is quite, it's not very normal. It means that the Commission doesn't have, or the European Union doesn't have the full power. It's an agreement of continuous consensus of member states and Commission services that agree on all legal steps, on all implementation steps. This has a lot of challenges because we have to get this agreement every single time. But also it builds a very nice structure. So far we have 8 working groups and technical groups. Some of them deal with good environmental status, some of them deal with marine litter, which is very fashionable nowadays. What these groups try to do is actually to transfer the knowledge from the very new research, or the knowledge, the best available knowledge that is out there, and put it into the hands of the decision makers at the national scale. So we are trying to make this transfer, and it is very difficult. And here I get to my challenges. The main challenge for all these people is time. I mean, it's time and resources limitation. We all know that. Nobody will tell you that these are not very good ideas, very good concepts to be implemented, but it's very difficult. MSFD, for example, was adopted in 2008. It is the result of an economic crisis. So we live in a context of limited resources. And even if people are very keen on implementing all these principles, we all lack time and resources. So here I come to one of the messages I have just heard, which is actually we have to be very realistic. In these kind of processes, whatever we propose to do, either is responsible research, either is education, communication, ocean literacy, we have to be very precise and realistic so that you don't promise the people something that it's not feasible. You don't design expectations. You have to define a common objective, something that is reachable, and work for it. And when I say we, it's all the chain of knowledge. We have, of course, the society, we have the policymakers and decision makers, we have the scientists as the main input of information, and we also have businesses. And the businesses are those that drive also what we do in the field, what the environmental status that we call is. And finally, one other key message that I can take from what I heard, I very much like the idea of bringing the oceans to the streets. That's actually the main challenges we have. The main challenge we have. It's so difficult to make understand the relevance and the importance, the intrinsic value of the oceans that are far away, so far away, the deep sea, something you never ever see, you never ever touch, and bring it to the heart of our societies. So this is actually our main challenge and something that is our main goal for all of us.
Thank you very much. I think we might come back later on what still are the drivers to bring the ocean to the seas, and whether we don't have some leverage ourselves individually to make it happen a bit more. Let's say our sector policies was, with inverted commas, was to distinguish from science, research, innovation policies. So that was not, I would say, a narrow denomination for the Marine Strategy Framework Directive. Maybe we can still continue with Ian. What do you feel from the other side of the coin? Let's say there is this a bit, not conflict, but this balance between Marine Strategy Framework Directive on one side, blue growth and socio-economic development on the other side. You mentioned yesterday, close your eyes and think what will be the ocean in 2050. It's going to be drastically different from what we see today. How do you perceive some of the messages that were shared here, or also what comes from the young professional when they talk about monologue?
First of all, we're totally in favour of free research, because often curiosity-driven research reveals new findings. I think it was a researcher searching in a Spanish swamp on bacteria that discovered CRISPR, which is probably the biggest innovation in the past 20 years in science. But now, also, maybe I'd like to add something about open data and time, as Camino says. We don't have much time. For instance, in the Plastics Directive, we had 2 months to prepare an impact assessment. And this was because Parliament was finishing. We wanted to get it to them quickly. There was an overwhelming public support, as I told you yesterday, to do something. But we have to get it through the Regulatory Scrutiny Board, who are something like the Spanish Inquisition. They want numbers, they want they want to know why you're doing it, what the EU added value, and it really helped. Open data really helped because we could gather information. There's no time to go out and measure how much plastic there is on beaches, how much there is in the sea. We had to go out and look for all the studies that have been done, all the open literature, and this really helps us because time is short. And maybe another example was at the end of November, we were discussing the decarbonisation strategy. This is the Commission's strategy which came out the 28th of November for limiting emissions to zero by 2050. I think I mentioned it yesterday. Well, towards the end of the process, we realised that it hadn't really taken enough account of the sea, and we wanted to know how much protein how much land does it take to give a given amount of protein, both on land and at sea. Unfortunately, we found some papers that had been published with the accompanying documents in Excel format, and we had 3 or 4 days to analyse this, and really, this really helped. So without this open data, we wouldn't have been able to, we'd have missed the opportunity to put the oceans on the agenda. So I can say lots of other things, but I think I spoke a lot yesterday, so maybe I'll give the floor to somebody else. Gesine,
Okay, so is it long enough? Yes? Apparently it is. Okay, I think most of you have heard me yesterday already, so maybe I introduced myself anyway. I'm Gesine Meissner, MEP from Germany and the European Parliament in 2009. And since 2009, actually, I'm involved in ocean things because my first committee is transport, and when I found out that transport is responsible for integrated maritime policy, it's the leading committee, I thought, wow, that's my topic. And so I started right away with that, and I had been rapporteur for integrated maritime policy, for maritime spatial planning, for port perception facility, bringing the waste on land, and for several other things. And since then, I had been speaker in all the European Maritime Days, and that is already one ocean monologue. You said ocean monologue or ocean dialogue. And I always liked to be there in the European Maritime Day, but the first one I really liked a lot was Gothenburg in Sweden, because there were many school classes invited. And then I right away told DG Mare, hi, you should do that more often, because usually it's kind of a closed society. It's an ocean society. You can meet everywhere. In European Maritime Days, in our ocean conferences, I always see the same faces. Well, of course, some local ones new, but most of them are really known, and they know each other. It's a big society. It's a dialogue, but kind of a monologue at the same time. And so I think really what we need is something, bring ocean on the street. It's, like you said, something I absolutely liked, and I try my best since 2009 to do so. So all school classes, they dare to invite me, all visitor group that dare to visit me, go through ocean, because I always raise this topic, and when I'm invited for a panel or so, I always try to include something on oceans as information. So it's a small bit of ocean literacy, what you all do right now. And actually, yes, 2014, I told you yesterday, I founded this intergroup Syrica, Seas, Rivers, Island and Coastal Areas. I didn't know whether it would work, because our aim was really to have a platform to address all the different ocean issues, like and to invite the whole community, like industry and economy and stakeholders in general, politicians. We work together with 8 general directions from the Commission, and of course NGOs and public, interested public. And the issues we addressed were so different, like offshore energy, or maybe slowing Gulf Stream, or marine protected area and their economic value, several other things like that, all a mixture. And always we had a mixture in the public, and that really works. Since 2015 we did 50 conferences, or 52 by now, with more than 5,000 participants, and it was really a success, because apparently ocean is in the interest of not only a community, but maybe others as well who come from the outside. And that's why I think it's so important to even raise it more. But nevertheless, although, for example, ocean is now kind of in the interest of everybody through plastic pollution, that was a big issue for everybody. Nevertheless, it can be that oceans still are forgotten. For example, last week in plenary in Strasbourg, we had a climate debate. Only for 1 hour, it was limited for 1 hour because of the Brexit. The Brexit took a lot of time, and so we couldn't talk about the climate longer than 1 hour. And in this case, in this 1 hour, I wanted to be a speaker, but since I'm in the environmental committee, but only as a substitute member, I wasn't allowed to speak. Only the full members were allowed to speak. So nobody mentioned the climate and the ocean in the climate debate. And they are crucial for our climate. They are influenced badly by climate change, and they can help us forward with better solution. Blue energy was never mentioned, and so on. And there were several resolutions from the political groups from the parliament on this climate debate. No single word on ocean. And I hated it so much that I made a press release right away for Germany only, and I said no climate without oceans. And I just mentioned the importance of oceans to bind CO2, to produce oxygen and whatever, and to produce, for example, blue energy. In future, it could be that 10% of European energy could be sustainably produced by the ocean, wave energy, tidal energy. I think you know about that, and so that is very important. Ocean literacy is your main topic. That is something we thought is very important. So we, as our Syrica intergroup, we launched we went for a project, Ocean Literacy. It was accepted, and now it was just launched by DG Mare a couple of days ago. So there will be something in ocean literacy. That is very important. And for example, what we did as well as intergroup, we arranged that the Ocean Plastics Lab, this big exhibition, was in front of the European Parliament for 10 days. And many school classes came there, 8,000 participants we could welcome. And so that is another issue. It's not enough because apparently still many people don't know about really the importance. But meanwhile, I was nominated by the Parliament's president as his special envoy on maritime policy last year. And since then, I kind I called him every week in order to have a big ocean conference, what we have today, finally, in the hemicycle. Because, you know, something that's in the hemicycle of the European Parliament is really important. And now everywhere in the European Parliament you can see roll-ups, and they say ocean is our future. And so that's something, it's only for this afternoon, but anyway, it's there. And it's organized together with mainly DG Mare, with the Commission, and with the Parliament and the relevant committees. And we have 1,000 participants, I think, or so. It's really something else. And so I just tell you all these things because I think everybody of us can do something. And what you did is absolutely great. It's fantastic. It's a pity that we didn't know each other before. Well, some of the faces I know, GPA Ocean is represented. I see it over there. Hello. And so on. But we cannot meet every day, everywhere. Maybe we really need a platform, a digital platform to exchange views on ocean literacy, on our progresses and what we want to achieve and so on. And I'm optimistic, so that's why I think finally we will, with the ocean literacy program and as well with the IOC UNESCO Decade for Ocean Science beginning to 2021, that will be another issue. But of course, it's just a plan. It's not yet implemented, and we have really to reach all the people in school classes. I think I spoke quite long. Maybe I should stop over here.
No, I will. Maybe before, Gail, you speak, maybe one question to the three of you. What has changed in the last decade that you feel has been very positive for what we discussed today? Jan, you said open access was a key element. Camille, you say that in the MSFD there is some obligations on stakeholder mobilization, even if we know that's not exactly what we might expect. Any other element that you feel is essential to the success of research, innovation, literacy that may rise? And then a second following question is, what else to add in priority to make it work better? Bit challenging questions, but because we talked about certifying processes, we feel that might be a way to move MSFD process a bit to a different level, because you will be certified to a minimum level of consultation. Just what we did, it's good, it has its purpose, maybe you could go further. We talk about new skills, we talk about new communities coming in. Any idea of what more?
Since I have the micro, I start.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we are on a good way, but we still have to go a long path, so to say. Ocean literacy is a good start, and MSFD it is implemented the member states. It's not yet done the way it should. If marine protected zones are better in place than they are right now, that is could be a big success. You asked what was changed in the last 10 years. First of all, really people got a little bit more aware of the importance of the ocean, that they got aware we live on the blue planet, not all of them, but some at least, and it's a starting point. I think progress is as well our ocean conferences all this year in Norway, although not everybody is there, but they are in different spots of the globe, and they're really, you can do commitments. Companies do commitments, member states, governments do commitments, and it will, so they promise something, to give money, to have more marine protected areas or whatever. And then it is controlled whether really they stay to what they promised. And that is a big success as well, but we need more of it. And so all in all, I think all of us should still have more effort to bring it to people and to raise this attention for the ocean, because we need the ocean for our future. That's clear.
Yeah, we talked about it yesterday about commitments and tracking progress versus these commitments as one element. Jan, do you want to?
Well, I'm not sure what's changed, but I think there was an assessment somebody told me of the Baltic by Helcom about 10 years ago that didn't mention plastic. So I don't know what changed it, but maybe what contributed slightly.
It's Camille, she changed.
Maybe it's the social media, Instagram, photographs of birds' stomachs with bottle tops in them. Maybe it's turtles captured in nets. Maybe that is something that's changed, that has changed people's attitudes. Camino probably has a better idea.
Thank you. So if you ask us what has changed in this last decade, a huge amount of things. Just to continue your topic, so the MSFD was only started to be implemented in 2012. So we just finished the first cycle of implementation. It's only these 6 years that we are learning how to do it, and we are implementing it in all the European countries. So for instance, we started with a very ambitious and nice text that included underwater noise and marine litter, where nobody had a clue about what the situation was. So back 10 years ago, no researcher was counting marine litter items. So that's obviously an effort that has been doing also for noise, also for new topics. But it's not only knowledge that has been growing, it's the cooperation. So there are a lot of new initiatives that has been, for instance, there is the Sustainable Ocean Initiative globally that tries to merge and to align the objectives of regional sea conventions, which has mostly an environmental focus, and regional fisheries management organization, which has mostly a fisheries management fisheries role. So there is a lot of international initiatives that are building much more bridges that we have 10 years ago. And the marine protected areas is a nice example, because only in the last 4 or 5 years, the area covered by marine protected areas in Europe has almost doubled. So, and this is just 5 years. And still we know we have to manage them effectively and properly. But this is a huge investment of effort from the management and from the policy side. So yeah, of course, we are running after all these actions, but there is a lot of movement and a lot of developments in them.
Maybe, Gail, your perspective a bit in terms of this link between knowledge and policies.
May I maybe add something?
Sorry,
but no, only because What we didn't mention is young people. I think the engagement of young people changed as well in the last 10 years. For example, several young people started to make beach cleans and so on. And I just mentioned Melati Weissen in Bali. It's far away from here, but she, together with her sister, she started this initiative Bye Bye Plastic Bags, and she kind of forced her government to have a plastic directive right now. And so young people always can change the world, and that is something you do here as well.
Let's maybe to preempt, think about the reactions from the young when they say monologue. It will be my first round of questions before we get an exchange with the people. So monologues, what is a bit your answers? Gesine, you say yes, young people have the solutions, but they come back to say monologues. So there is maybe a small issue to be discussed. Gail?
Okay, so kind of thinking about all of this in one big ball, just a small preface. In the US and probably in the EU as well, there are two ways that, or two streams of policy. One is policy that affects the kind of research that is funded. That's the livelihood of the scientist. Then there is policy that affects management and regulation. And so as scientists and the young professionals in this room, you have an opportunity to have a voice. I do want to address this monologue business. It is your responsibility to make sure it's not a monologue. It's not always our responsibility. So I encourage you all to find your voice and use it. And so, having said that, Pierre asked me to talk a little bit about how things work in the US. The way that research funding decisions are made, policy about research funding, is that there's the Office of the President of the United States. Within that office is something called the Office of Science and Technology Policy. And where the ocean fits in is there's an Ocean Research Advisory Panel that provides advice and guidance to the Office of Science and Technology Policy, and they really are the decision makers overall of what the big scientific research initiatives are going to be in the United States. And so I served on the Ocean Research Advisory Panel under President Obama. And as an aside, I was re-upped for 4 more years under President Trump. He has not convened our advisory panel once since he's been elected. Very depressing. But anyway, our job is to actually reach out to our community of scientists, education professionals, both young and old and in between, and determine what are the main topics that our federal government should be focused on in terms of funding for research. So that's that side of the coin. In terms of management and regulatory policy, it's really important for scientists to have a voice in that, as you said. And I'll give you an example about underwater sound. My team, that's one of our areas of expertise, and we've done now 3 needs assessments of the international regulatory community for underwater sound, one in 2015 and 16 and 18. We'll do another one this year because we do education of policymakers around that topic, and we were shocked to find out that often policy makers need information in weeks, sometimes even in days, and they need to know where to find that information quickly. The other thing that we found that was very disturbing is that of the 300 plus policymakers that responded to our survey, only 19% of them around the world have had any training in marine acoustics. So these folks are making policy decisions with virtually no education in very short periods of time. So then what can we do, and what are the practical solutions? Find our voice, make sure that we know who the policymakers are that we can reach. Be brave, knock on doors, introduce yourself, and I'm speaking mainly to the young people because we're going to depend on you to really make a difference in the world. And make yourself accessible. So those are 2 things that I wanted to react to. And then finally, I'd like to react to this issue of ocean and climate. Most of you don't know who I am, but I'm basically an oceanographer who's a climate change scientist. So I have straddled these two worlds of ocean and climate my entire career. And I am very involved both nationally and internationally in the Ocean Literacy Initiative. However, it really is very upsetting to me that we have separated the ocean from the Earth system. And ocean literacy began in the US, as most of you know, about 20 years ago. And the reason is because no one was talking about the ocean. Our country was completely illiterate about all issues related to the ocean. So we felt it was important to cull out ocean. However, we're now at a point, and I think you are too in the EU because you've been involved in ocean literacy for many years as well, that we need to bring the ocean back to the Earth system. And so it's not just ocean, it's not just climate, it's the Earth system that we need to be focused on. And so that's my soapbox for this morning.
Thanks to make it much simpler that we started with. I think that's an important element because it links also to bring the ocean back to the street. I think in these discussions, I think your Earth approach is probably one element and one solution. I would suggest we open the floor. You heard about this. Please, do you have specific questions, comments about whether what was put as practical solution or some element that I shared with us from the panel? Introduce yourself.
Yes, good afternoon. Catherine Angle-Hansen, JPI Oceans. I'd also like to respond to your question about what has changed during the last 10 years. What has changed is sitting up there. The policy framework, which is a new unit. I mean, formally it was fisheries advice, environmental advice, but really the big silos. When DG Maris started out with the maritime policy, I think you had 12 commission services at the table under President Barroso, massive processes to try to put these things onto the agenda. So I think the Commission in our case has done a great job in paving the way in order to, I'd say, follow a bit what the US is doing with your cooperation amongst other with the 4 Ns, the NASA, the Navy, the NSF and the NOAA, of course. So this need to work politically out of the silos, to me, is the big game changer. I would just, if I could say, I fully agree we need to take the Earth system approach, but I still think that the fact that we also have this big change of having an ocean decade, that we have a SDG 14 on
Okay, it's working. Comments, reactions, let's say we have here. And remember from the young professional groups,
everyone. We achieved quite a lot in barely 1.5 days. Can you imagine what we can achieve in just 4 years?
Hi, I think we want to speak today because we represent a part of society, maybe a part of society that hasn't really been represented in conferences like these. But equally, the proportion of society that will be experiencing most of these changes in the ocean and in the environment that we've been talking about. And this is the thing, like the youth we live in a changing world of, social media and technology and startups, and I think we're dynamic and we're passionate, and according to the UN, over 90% of the youth believe that our generation can make a difference in climate change and other issues related to the environment. So yeah, I think that it's really important that we are talking about these issues and given, a fair voice.
We're here to help. Next time, we want to take part, but take part from the start. We have the knowledge, we have the creativity, but most of all, we have the motivation. So we don't just want to be a special edition. Next time, we want to take a seat at your table from day one. Thank you.
So, the three of us, so Shani, she's not here, but we were the facilitators of the Young Professional Workshop. And, well, we didn't expect this morning that this would be the statement we were going to make. So, from our role in the group, it was really interesting to see how this process developed. We had so many diversity in the group, so many young people with good ideas, who were having dialogues the entire day yesterday. And they all came up with good, practical solutions. But we had to look for an overarching, principle or message we had to give to all of you. And this morning, their message was, we've been working so hard, but nobody listened. We reached out our hand. We asked, can anybody help? Just few people responded. So they said, okay, we want to make this statement. And I think it's really brave what they did. So please, another applause for the young professionals for what they've done.
And I also, very short little aspect I wanted to add is, to a certain extent, the result of this young professional workshop is a symbol of the success of all of the ocean literacy and youth inclusion policies that have been done over the past 20 years. The next generation that we started talking about ocean difficulties to, or the environment, or climate change, is now a group of dynamic young professionals wanting to change the world. We have very high expectations and hopes, probably because at schools we were told that we could do something and make it change. So now we're here and would really like to participate in all of this.
Thank you very much. Any more, let's say, reactions from the panel, or do we move to the last session, which is trying to clean a bit? We move on. So I will just say very quickly, you can stay again, or you can you get better. Three elements in this closing session. The first one will be the last one. Sorry for that small technicality issue. Yeah. Maybe we keep it for towards the end, Gordon, or just make it now short.
I think, thanks for just 2 seconds. I think I really appreciate the young professionals coming on board. They are a stakeholder group that's not engaged, and we're all talking about stakeholder groups here and how we effectively engage with them. There are researcher professional associations, young associations, that collectively provide a voice for researchers. I'm the chair of ICORSA, the International Consortium of Research Staff Associations, and they are a partner in the RING project and the GRIP project. They're the first time that they're being involved. It's also the Global Young Academy, so these groups should be incorporated into Horizon 2020 projects as partners in these consultation processes.
Thank you. We try to see the technical difficulties are solved. I just say we get a first point, which is to remind what is on table from Marina and responsible platforms, where you will get access to information products, what has been produced by the two projects. The second is a brief traveling journey through what we feel were key messages that goes out of the Ocean Dialogues, what we call the manifesto. The idea is not to debate, to modify it here, is to bring it to your attention, and then we will get an iteration afterwards to bring it slowly to a consolidated manifesto that reflects what the Ocean Dialogues have been talking about. And then there will be just maybe a last wish from Camillo, Gesine, and Jan, just to say, from what I heard, bring this home, let's get mobilized in that direction, and then we will close the session. So the platforms, we start, still this was a Marina Responsible co-organized event. It's not finished. Let's share with you in a few words where you can find whatever the projects have worked on, delivered, produced, etc. This was a comment from Ivan. You saw some it in the demo deck. I hope the demo deck gave you inspiration to continue with what was presented. And now, Sasha, a couple of words on the platform of Sasha or Francesca. I don't know, with Marina, it's Fernando? Okay.
Hello, just to remind you that all of you have gotten a small folder in your bag, which in fact does explain what we did in Responsible over the last years in very, very, very quick and summary way, because most of the things you've seen on the demo deck, the tools, the different platforms that we have created, we have tested them, and we have very positive feedback from the users. So what is maybe not seen on the demo deck is the type of questions that drove the process. Like what we wanted to know in Responsible is what type of knowledge we need, who needs to know, and how, and then the process that underlines it, so that how we actually co-create things with the users, how we measure that what we do is effective, because we make many things, and important is to know that they are reaching the right people, and our messages and our information and knowledge reaching the right people, and they are getting the message, and they becoming ocean literate in our understanding, so they are changing behavior. In this little booklet, there are short messages about what we worked on. We worked on the key with key marine challenges. There are 6 of them. There are products that, of course, they're online, they're open access, they're for everybody to use, to test, to take them to your countries, to your organizations, to improve them, to continue using them. And to say maybe one more thing is that we are still, what we didn't present at the demo deck, but we are working on the interactive guidance for ocean literacy practitioners, which I think something that was mentioned here before, that we do need some kind of a platform for exchange, for having this, and this maybe could be one of the elements that our knowledge from what we've learned in the project, from what with the partners and the users, our recommendations, and it comes in a bit innovative form. So it's not just a list of recommendations, but it's people's experiences put together with questions, put together with videos, a bit with a maybe not a gaming approach, but somewhere you can find your own journey to the ocean. So you can find some knowledge, some scientific data, how do we work with that. Make your own links between things, and yes, it will be coming up at the end of the month. I think you can explore the rest, and yeah, I'd like to give the floor to Marina.
Thank you. Fernando?
Yeah, so when I show the result of Marina, I use a slide, just the second slide, to illustrate. Can you? Yes, because this slide illustrates the approach and all the results of the Marina project. In particular, I want to clarify that the process is circular, because every result has impact on the other, and there is a continuous refinement of the different results. So, for example, the last version of the platform has been released in February, because this version takes into account all the other results. I can give you some spot of some of the main results. We have an work in progress ontology integrated with the platform that we will manage also in the next year for working on the base of the information that yes. Probably there is a disconnection. Right. Okay. Yes, okay. Then another result is just a moment, I need the glasses. Yes, another result is the methodology for the MML workshop for extracting the RRI concept. Another result obviously is the knowledge sharing platform, because it is possible to manage with the knowledge sharing platform a different kind of activities, like, for example, events. You can follow the overall events we had these days on the platform. You can take this event from the platform and you can embed this event in your website. You can continue to provide comments, documents, to support you can create a working space, both private and public, where communities can collaborate on the platform. Another important result is the roadmap based on lessons learned that we collected during the overall process of the project. This meeting has also impact on the policy brief we will produce in the last month of the project. Another important result is the exhibition. now the exhibition is in Nausicaa. You can see here just an example, a small example. But I think what is really important, and it is at the base of the concept that we have to implement, is open data. Because many of the information are public by the wiki, but all the data stored in the platform are can be used by other platforms using the JSON technology, and you can take any information from the platform and you can embed this information in your website for having multiple access, and this is the base of the concept. I at the comment of Ivan regarding the needs of to use this platform. The key message is federation. It's federating because we have many very useful platform, but we need to have a more integration of this platform, and this is one of the reasons we started this collaboration with the Responsible, because with the Responsible we can close the circle: science, policy, society, because obviously our point of view is mainly a platform for facilitating the collaboration among researchers. It is also open to the society, but it is important to have a stronger collaboration with the policymaker and with the society, because without these three very relevant parts, it is impossible to obtain the results of regarding the oceans, because it is a very complex problem. We can do something, but without changing the behavior, it is impossible to have impact.
Thank you. Two words. It's a tweet, a small tweet.
Yes, it's a tweet. We have been talking about the process. The process, as Fernando said, and my colleagues at Marina, you find it at the RRI roadmap. Please go on the platform and download it. It tells you exactly how to identify your stakeholders, make the story, how to engage them, how to motivate them, and you can find on the Marina platform 504 lessons learned coming from 45 workshops, mobilization workshops, from 1,000 participants from European countries and Turkey. Okay,
Two words.
Yes, there is a lot of good practices, and you can filter them by workshop methodology, by type of stakeholder, marine sector, and so forth. So please use it, okay? Especially the young ones. You have the knowledge. Don't create the wheel. Reuse it. Thanks.
Obviously, this information are accessible by the platform. Yeah,
We are going to close because there is a few time constraints. There is something happening in the European Parliament, and that's some of you, many of you are participating. Gesina is a key player there. Others will go. We go very quickly through the conclusions. We hope we don't take too much time. If we make it work. Maybe just what we had in the manifesto as a key message is today, knowing that's going to be refined, adapted. The first one was our starting point is recognizing challenges. I'm going to read it. I think if it comes, it comes. So the first one is recognizing the starting point is wide mobilization of all sectors of society as required to address ocean challenges. The second element in the message is to say our assumption is that an ocean knowledge system associating all stakeholders, producing, translating, and using knowledge is a prerequisite for effective ocean governance. We have some elements there. What is important is that this knowledge system covers all aspects of the human-ocean relationships and mobilize empirical knowledge, science, innovation. Then we go to the messages. For ocean knowledge system to play its due role, there is a series of principles. Understand societal needs and demands. I will go back after to what it requires to do so. Co-build knowledge. Shared and transparent mechanism to ensure quality and credibility of the knowledge produced and of the processes producing knowledge. So I think it's important. Protocols and rules to deliver open access and give accessibility. We can go back to what you heard from the tables on that. Targeted mechanisms to ensure the right knowledge reach the right target group. In bracket, if I go back to Ian, sometime in a very fast manner, which is an issue we have not really discussed earlier in our workshops. Ensure accountability and responsibility. I go back. And then these are principles, what to make sure it happens. So the first one was to have, yes, we need all of us to enlarge slightly our skills, personal one, to be able to address this more complex picture that we have seen. The second is more attention to human sciences. We make a list, sociology, psychology, media, marketing, etc., because it helps to capture what drives people. And if you understand it, you can then deliver initiatives that are fit for purpose. New actors need to be on the table, media science brokers in particular. New bridges. If I go back to what Ivan said, we don't need necessarily new platforms. Fernando said it, but there are existing platforms. Do we have the right interconnections that help us to travel through this ocean of platforms? New governance, management, and strategic plans for organization. That's something we heard yesterday from Gordon. Research organization, including to define long-term strategies, priorities, and the right incentives for people to deliver ocean literacy and responsible research and innovation. If you don't change the frame under which you operate, you will not change yourself. And then make sound and transparent evaluation of RRI, of ocean literacy, of whatever you deal around knowledge management, so you can monitor progress, whether your commitments have been achieved, and you can learn from experience. And finally, opportunities in all policies. Maybe I don't say very much. We heard some this morning. We have to think a bit more about it in preparation to the workshop tomorrow. The last set of message is to say, let's be clever today and have a forward-looking perspective. That's what Ian said yesterday. And we feel there is 3 dimensions in that. The first one is forward-looking exercises and visions, so we understand what is the ocean in 2050, and then anticipating future needs for knowledge and future role for the ocean knowledge system. The second is put more efforts in addressing future needs. Maybe Jan said it differently. Let's people play with research and develop things because maybe it is useful at some point. We have to give this flexibility. And the last one, it goes back to what we heard on the monologue, recognizing the importance of youth and young professionals as being part of a solution and having capacity to drive change. What it requires is that you associate them to the social and policy debate, so you put them around the table so they are part of the discussion and solutions. I think this is in line with what we heard from the young professionals. This was our key messages. What we propose is to share them with you after this conference, after the workshops we get on Wednesday, because we hope we get more elements coming from this last workshop. It has not moved here. I don't know if Gesine, Camillo, Jan, you want the last words, a short one, before you leave?
Yes, sorry, you can go on, but I really have to leave because I have to open this big conference this afternoon instead of the Parliament's president, and so I have to follow different forms of protocol. That's why I have to leave right away and go to the Parliament. Well, I think it was a very brilliant conference, and it's a pleasure for me that I could participate here. I'm looking forward for tomorrow, because tomorrow we have in the Parliament the presentation of the result of Marina and Responsible, and I will share this as well, so we'll see each other again. And Gail, your name is Gail, huh? I disagree a little bit with you, because you, as far as I understood you, say ocean things have to be combined with earth things. No? Was it not? I thought, because, you know, what I wanted to say, it's one of my key message maybe. At first, we have really to bring ocean in the focus of everybody. So I think we need an ocean dialogue with society, with a complete society. Because I just tell you, what is otherwise a danger? We are going now for Horizon Europe, for the new research program of Europe. And so we pushed as our intergroup to look for a Mission Healthy Ocean that was proposed by the Professor Mazzucato as well. And then Mission Healthy Ocean in the politicians who are not involved with ocean things, it was turned to Mission Healthy Oceans and Waters, then it was only waters, and then it was rivers, and then it was food and agriculture. And so all of a sudden the ocean disappeared. And that is really the danger, because so many people only think of solid ground, of earth, because ocean doesn't have any waters. And so for politicians, it's always better to focus at first only on the oceans, I think, together with the society, and then do the rest. And ocean governance, it was a big thing that we had in the Commission that really touched all the aspects that oceans are as well. Something for security policy, for development policy. In general, oceans are our future and have to be involved in everything we debate. So that is my last words. I have to rush. I think two of you, I think it's you who spoke before, will be present in the high-level, ceremony. That's great. And you will be maybe around, and we'll see each other tomorrow again. So bye-bye.
Many thanks to Gesine. Jan, Camillo, last message.
Okay, thank you. It's complicated to get one message from from all the information and brilliant ideas we have been hearing. It's more a plea of just for wishes. So I have a plea of let's get a coherent view and a coherent management of our oceans. Let's try to spread the word about what the oceans mean for our lives and how we should tackle all the issues, all the pressures that they are actually suffering. So only if we get it through society, because individuals have the responsibility of their acts. So your shopping bag have some, you have some responsibility on the acts that you do every day, like such as buying, such as commuting. So that's the first component. And this is something that people is not usually trained to think about. But then also at the management and policy, not policy, it's at the decision-making level, we have to think cross-border. Decision makers usually have a boundary, which is their territory. But of course, the ocean doesn't know anything about boundaries. So we have to see the oceans as a common goal to manage all together beyond our national or politic interest. And of course, science are much more used to make these transboundary approaches, that's for sure. But still, as I think Sheila said this morning, we have to go through this transdisciplinarity. So it's not my individual field that is going to answer all these complex questions. It's a common effort, summing up efforts from all the disciplines. So let's try to get this coherence. It's coherence for the knowledge and coherence for the management, the actual real actions that we put on place. That's all.
One wish to, Ian, or?
Yeah. I don't disagree with Gesine, of course. But there is one aspect of the whole planet approach that's interesting, because maybe there's two aspects. The first aspect is nearly all human activity is near the coast, and this is where the big pressures are, and some of these come from the land. The other question is a bit like you've heard of opportunity costs in economics. If you do something, you can't use the resources for something else. But it's a bit the other way round as well. If you do something on land or at sea, like deep sea mining, aquaculture, then you don't do it on land. And maybe there's sometimes a balance between the two that you need to consider. So there is something, I think it's something we need to consider. So it was an interesting discussion that you can carry on tomorrow or whenever. Thanks.
Let's say it's true that in responsible we try to move a bit to this land-sea interface by, for example, talking about agriculture in relation to the sea, which is rarely put in an ocean discussion debate, for example. And we were not successful in getting agricultural people here to contribute to a debate, for example. Many thanks. Do the last host, the young professional, want to say a last word in this? You were very right that we put you aside. We felt that building your community would make you a bit stronger to come to what exists here. We hope it's successful. Any final reactions that you want us to bring along?
Yeah, it's been really, really, really good and really, really interesting seeing all people from all different backgrounds. Obviously, meeting all of you guys, it's been absolutely brilliant, and seeing what goes on, not necessarily in the public perspective, and just seeing how much amazing work everybody's doing. And we're kind of communicating it together in a really efficient way, which is really, really, really cool. But yeah, just to say thank you really very much. I'm really, really honoured. And yeah, thank you very much, everybody. Cool.
In fact, I forgot there are two manifestos. There is the boring version of what I explained, and then there is the more interesting version that Delphine has developed here with us. It looks... We want to be very clear. We don't do it because it looks funny and nice. We believe that it is part of being effective in sharing and bringing legacy. So don't misinterpret the role of Delphine here during these 2 days. There will be essential component in bringing the dialogues forward, and whatever we have done in Marina and Responsible and in the Ocean Dialogues. I suggest we bring the couple back to the table. So Fernando and Olga, it's because of you we are here. If you want to tell us a few closing words.
Taking inspiration by the manifesto, I think that we can conclude this conference with an idea of ocean knowledge system in movement. We can start this concept and then trying to federate all efforts toward this objective.
And I'm happy. Well, first of all, thank you all for coming. And I think we got a lot of inspiration when we first started to think about it. We didn't know what will come out, and I'm now very happy that we have all of you here. Since we have this wedding thing, I think maybe we will be celebrating these anniversaries afterwards, but we can extend our family and build on maybe including some other family members, like maybe from the agriculture and other industries, other marketing and business, maybe they will come on board. So for us, I think it's been very inspiring to see all of these different components that come together, and we did have a dialogue. So thank you all.
If you are here, it's not because Francesca, Sasha, Olga, myself, Fernando, and it's because there are two projects behind. There are partners that were in the workshop, the discussion. There are products that are presented outside. So there is a much wider family than the visible one that you saw during the 2 days. So I would like that we applaud for this invisible, somewhere here, but somewhere outside, that we thank very much all partners from Marina and responsible for making these 2 days possible. So please. I mentioned Delphine, many thanks, but there were also people taking pictures. There is a person that is doing web streaming. There were some technical facilities provided to us. So Attilio, Antoine, Nick, many thanks for keeping this into the memory and bringing it to social media, bringing it to web streaming, etc. Because in fact, we hopefully shared what we discussed with a much wider group. Thanks to your support. It's the end. I put a slide here. Remember, we started in Burgas. There is Lisboa. There is a big Portuguese community here. There is a European Maritime Day. And this afternoon and tomorrow, there is a big event at the European Parliament. I guess we might see some of you. Have a very, very safe journey. And thanks to speakers, panelists, and all who supported it.
Thank you.
And many thanks to Pierre and Sasha for being with us all these days and helping us to get through.